Welcome to the 3DownNation podcast. I'm Justin Dunk, joined by John Hodge. And Hodge, better late than never for the episode, right?
Sure, better late than never. I'll take it. And hey, I was having a beautiful, wonderful vacation with my wife in St. John's, Newfoundland this past week. I'd never been to the Rock before, and we loved it. So shout out to the people in Newfoundland. We had an outstanding time.
You got the hat too for the people watching on YouTube.
I do, and I wore it to Bombers practice on Sunday, and we're milling around as reporters waiting for Mike O'Shea to do his availability. And Ed Tate, who listens to the podcast every week, shout out Ed Tate, their in-house reporter, says, "Hey, John, you get away for the break?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Did you go to St. John's, Newfoundland?" And I forgot for a split second, I forgot I was wearing the hat. I'm like, oh my God, Ed is clairvoyant. What is happening? And then I was like, and then he goes, "Well, you're wearing the hat." And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. That makes sense. So no, Ed does not. Well, I shouldn't say he does not have the powers to read minds. We don't know that he doesn't, but at least in this case, I think he just saw the hat. I don't think he thought anyway. But yeah, we had a great time. One big highlight was we went to this place called Kitty Vitty Lake, a pond, I guess, for the regatta, which is this annual huge boat race scene. They have like 50,000 people come down to this pond in St. John's. Yeah, the metro area of St. John's only has a little over 200,000 people. It's the biggest day of the year in St. John's. And we're chatting, we just randomly started chatting with these couple locals, a couple brothers and a sister. They come back for the regatta every year, and one of them now lives in Idaho. And he was talking to me about how he's a huge Boise State Broncos fan. And he goes, "So what do you do for a living?" I said, "Oh, I cover Canadian football." He says, "Football?" He's like, "You cover Canadian football?" I said, "Yeah, do you remember Ryan Dinwiddie?" And he's like, "Of course." And I'm like, "Well, he's won 2 Grey Cups and a Coach of the Year as a head coach in the Canadian Football League." And he was blown away. So we were at Kitty Vitty. We were talking about Ryan Dinwiddie. And yeah, you never know who you're going to meet or where you're going to meet him, but there's always a CFL connection to connect with new people and build bridges.
When I think about Ed Tate in my head, I think about him as a old school detective, private investigator type who knows everything that goes on in the Manitoba Capital, Hodge. So the fact that he knew where you were, he was just picking up the clues, man.
He was. Yeah, you can't sneak anything by Ed. There you go.
It sounds like you had a good vacation, man. Good to have you back.
Oh, it was awesome. Yes, I will say I'm thrilled to be back where the ground is flat. We did some hills in Halifax, and I will say the elevation in St. John's makes Halifax look like Regina. It is wild down by the harbor. There are places where the sidewalks literally become stairs because the angle is that extreme that it's not safe to just have a sidewalk. It literally becomes stairs. So I got my steps in. My calves are they're like titanium now. I'm ripping up the hills. I'm ripping down, but I'm glad to be back where it's flat. I went for a beautiful walk yesterday in Winnipeg, and I don't think my I don't think any of the places I walk changed by more than about a foot off sea level. Whereas St. John's, you can walk 2 blocks and it's like walking up 5 sets of stairs. It's unbelievable down by.
It's good for you, Hodge.
It is good. It is good. But I'm also happy to be back where it's.
Let's get to it. We're discussing the Ottawa Redblacks cutting even more veterans loose.
Chad Kelly saying he's not going to turn into check down Charlie.
The playoff race in the West Division.
Harrison Frost's first start for the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
The BC Lions making some inductions into their Wall of Fame.
And the Canadian women's and men's teams competing at the IFAF Flag Football World Championships. But first,
the Alouettes are 8-1 halfway through the 2026 CFL season. Montreal has the 2 frontrunners for the most outstanding player award and the far and away frontrunner for the most outstanding Canadian award. That would be, in order, Davis Alexander and receiver Tyson Philpott. Could the Owls be on their way to the best season ever in league history?
They really could. And obviously, nothing's guaranteed. There's lots of football left to be played. I was looking at the Alouettes' schedule. The fact that they're done playing the Edmonton Elks, I think bodes well. I think we all agree that the Elks are one of the top 3 teams in this league. The Alouettes have not yet played the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who are the other top team in this league. I think we all agree. Those meetings will happen back to back in week 19 and week 20. But with that said, what this team has accomplished to what is their midway point of the season, they're now, of course, 8-1, as you mentioned, they're halfway through the regular season schedule, is unbelievable. We went back and looked at the numbers, you and myself, Justin. It's only happened one time in CFL history that the same team had the leading passer, leading rusher, and leading receiver in the same season. The Montreal Alouettes accomplished that in 2011 with Anthony Calvillo being the leading passer, and then the leading rusher and receiver being Brandon Whitaker and Jamel Richardson, respectively. This team is almost on pace for that. Alexander is on pace to lead the CFL in passing. Tyson Philpott is not just on pace to lead in receiving, he's on pace to kill everybody in receiving. And then Travis Tice is almost on pace to be the leading rusher. The best record in CFL history, it's happened twice at 16-2. The Toronto Argonauts did that in 2023, and the Edmonton football team, we'll call them, did it in 1989. Interesting note, though, about both of those teams is they both lost in the first round of the playoffs by double digits. So I don't think the Alouettes here need to be focused on 17-1 or 16-2. What they need to be focused on is winning the East Final. And the reason I say that is because just looking, and no disrespect to the Toronto Argonauts and Hamilton Tiger Cats, but just looking how the other teams in the East Division are playing, I really don't see an avenue realistically right now for anybody to catch this team. And I know the Alouettes are going to say all the right things, and you know they're not getting ahead of themselves. But I'll let you get into it, Justin. It might not be that long before Montreal clinches first place.
It might not be. I'm actually going to say that for you, Hodge, because you're the mathematician here.
Fair
What I
enough.
wanted to dive deeper into was what you talked about in that mix there, with Alexander leading the league in passing, Travis Tice being 7 yards away from the rushing leader in the Canadian Football League, and Philpott, as you said, just blowing everybody else out of the water in terms of receiving yardage. First, for Alexander, leads the league in passing yards, 3,140. He has 8 300-yard games, 3 400-yard games, Hodge. But you know what jumps off the stats page most to me? 10 yards per drop back. That's not per pass, or that's not per completion. That's per drop back. An insane number. Alexander also leads the CFL with 62 pass attempts, traveling 20 or more yards. He's a CFL high 29 completions in that category of 20 yards or more. It's a 46.8% completion rate, not necessarily elite, but when you consider you throw the football down the field, the further you go, the lower your completion percentage drops. He has 11 touchdowns compared to 2 interceptions on those throws, 20 or more yards down the field, and almost 1,000 yards, 995 yards off those throws. Then you look at Tyson Philpott. 9 regular season games, okay? Keep that in mind. Just 9 regular season games. 96 targets, 74 receptions for 1,154 yards, 7 touchdowns, of course, coming off that hat trick last week in the big win over Edmonton. He has 10 30-plus yard catches already. 10. That's over 1 per game. I'm nowhere near as good of a mathematician as Hodge, but I know that's over 1 per game. He's averaging 128.2 receiving yards per game. He has 6 100-yard games. And you might think, okay, if he's getting all these deep targets, perhaps his yak yards are lower. Wrong. He's leading the Canadian Football League with 468 yards after the catch. And he is on pace, not just to break, but shatter The record set by Alan Pitts for single season receiving yardage, he had 2,036 yards in 1994. Philpott through 9 games. This is, again, easy math, Hodge. You just double it. He's on pace for 2,308 yards. Those are some insane numbers from a Canadian receiver who played at a Canadian institution. Imagine that.
Imagine that. And look, I ran some numbers. These are unofficial. This is just my cocktail napkin math. But I believe that the Alouettes can mathematically, and I'll stress it's just mathematically, I'm not saying it's going to happen or will happen, but the Montreal Alouettes, I believe, can clinch first place as early as week 14. Now, they're on bye in week 11. They would need to then come back from bye and win each of their next 3 games. They would also need some help. The Toronto Argonauts would need to lose every game from week 11 till week 14. 2 of those games are against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. If the Tiger Cats won the games against Toronto and lost the other 2, then at that point, at the end of week 14, I believe that's September 7th, that's Labor Day, the Alouettes would have clinched first place. Now, if we go back to 2023, the Toronto Argonauts clinched first place in the East Division the following week, and that was a wild year where everyone was like, oh my gosh, like the Argonauts are 11-1. They've still got 6 more games, and yet they've already clinched first place. This is crazy. This is unprecedented. This is wild. How are they going to handle that? Well, the Alouettes could be in essentially the same boat, 11-1 after 12 games and have clinched first place. Is that going to happen? I'm not saying it will. That would require literally every game involving the Alouettes, Argonauts, and Tiger Cats to go one particular way over the next month. But again, I don't think it matters in the long run. The Alouettes, they could easily suffer injuries over the next little bit. Anything can happen. It doesn't matter if they clinch in week 14, week 16, week 18. I think it's going to happen. The question is, can this team do what the Argonauts failed to do in 2023, which is overcome the expectations, whatever you want to call it, that, and I mean, we all know there were some off-field things leading into that East Final for the Argonauts in 2023. I don't know what was going on ahead of the West Final back in 1989 when Edmonton obviously couldn't get it done as a 16-2 team. But
you weren't even born yet, were you?
No, I wasn't even born yet. But I do think it's an interesting thought process here is, can the Alouettes, I mean, you laid out some of the numbers from an historical standpoint, which I think is smart. But yeah, can this team possibly finish 16-2? I'm kind of the opinion, and we'll talk about this a little bit to the opposite side of it in the next segment. I'm personally of the opinion that it's in the modern CFL pretty much impossible to win more than 15 games or lose more than 15 games. I kind of see the ceiling of victories as 15 and the basement at 3. Yes, there have been teams that have failed to reach those milestones. The Hamilton Tiger Cats, and I think it was 2003, only won 1 game, but that's pre-salary cap CFL. I don't really consider that modern CFL. But the Argonauts also did win 16 games just a few years ago. So we'll see. But regardless, what the Alouettes are doing right now is exceptional. To me, we've all talked about it, and if you look at our power rankings, right, this is or power rankings from other publications, everybody's got the same 3 top teams. It's Montreal, Saskatchewan, and Edmonton. And for me, at least, if I were to tier these teams, I would suggest that the Montreal Alouettes are in a tier of their own right now at the top of the league. The second tier would be Edmonton and Saskatchewan. I'd have the Riders over the Elks by a little bit, but not much. And then to me, the rest of the league is just another big tier down. The Alouettes have been dominant through the first half of the season. They deserve all the praise, all the accolades that they're getting. A lot of their victories haven't even been close. Like, they are blowing the doors off a lot of teams. And I mean, the numbers are unbelievable. This team is averaging offensively 8.1 yards per play. That is half a yard better than every team in the CFL. They are averaging 8.4 yards on first down. That is half a yard better than every other team in the CFL. And then defensively, like, We generally over the years have talked about Noel Thorpe's defenses in Montreal being very good. Well, it speaks volumes how good the offense is that no one's talking about the defense, because the defense has also been very good. They're third in yards against per play, and they're only 1/20th of a yard behind Edmonton and BC for first place. They're good through the air. They're good along the ground. They're getting takeaways. And then special teams. This team is really good as well. Like there's really no weakness across this Alouettes organization. The only challenge for them from here on out is going to be, can we stay sharp for the inevitable East final whenever they.
If and when, to your point, Hodge, the Alouettes clinch the East Division, what I won't like about it is the fact that it could, and I say could, change Tyson Philpott's pursuit of history. We talked about it earlier, told you the numbers that he's chasing with Alan Pitts. I feel like there would be that discussion between rest and, as you mentioned there, playing and being sharp. But the Alouettes do have some history on their side. The best single season record in franchise history, 15-3 in 2009, and Montreal won the Grey Cup over the Riders in 2009 that year. So the Alouettes are capable, at least in the team's history, of having a really good football team and capitalizing on it, because all the regular season hype and talk is great. And this Alouettes team is a really special one and a entertaining one to watch at that. But it will be forgotten, similar to the 2023 Argonauts, if the Alouettes cannot take advantage of the team that they have in the playoffs. There could be injuries that factor into this as well, but this Alouettes team is so fun to watch, Hodge. I just can't help but wonder. We haven't seen Davis Alexander take off really at all this season unless he's absolutely pressed into it. So I think back to what he played through in the Grey Cup last year, which was very close to a torn hamstring, depending who you ask on the Alouettes. They referred to it as a torn hamstring. Is he actually 100% healthy? And if he isn't, it's unbelievable that he's doing what he's doing, especially throwing the football down the field with authority like he's done through the first 9 games with Montreal.
Yeah, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. Davis Alexander is the closest thing we've seen to Doug Flutie since Doug Flutie in this league. And that's about as high of a compliment as you can give a quarterback in the CFL. The Redblacks continued releasing veterans this week, cutting starters Demario Houston and Amari Henderson in the secondary. Ottawa has also placed starting defensive lineman Bryce Carter and Michael Wakefield on the 6-game injured list, with 3DownNation reporting that Carter is out for the year with a torn Achilles. Are these releases a tacit omission that the Redblacks are not making the playoffs in 2026?
It's hard to see it any other way. Now, I don't think the team is giving up on 2026, but no team had made the playoffs at 0-7. No team in CFL history has made the playoffs at 0-8. We know that for a fact. It's not saying that Ottawa can't reel off 10 wins here, but the law of probability is extremely low that it could happen for the Redblacks to even somewhat get back in the playoff mix. So then I think when you're Ryan Dinwiddie, the head coach and general manager, and you're Sean Burke, the vice president of football operations, you got to start trying to find out what some of these younger players on your roster can do. And that's already happened, in the previous week with Shakur Brown and Eugene Lewis being released. We saw Cade McDonald get the start in Lewis's spot, and Shadwell and Nakuba drop a pick 6 in Saskatchewan. But I thought he looked okay considering it was his first CFL start. I mean, if he takes that to the house, I don't want to say he becomes a household name, but Redblacks fans are probably getting excited about that young cover man in the back end. So I do think that it at least looks that way, but you got to be careful because, Hodge, we've talked about this in the past. You don't want to have those young players, especially at the quarterback position, and I'm talking about Bryson Barnes here, get used to losing. You don't want to have them be part of a disastrous season, which this has turned out to be in many ways 0-8 for the Redblacks. And Hodge, you talked about it, saying that your floor in this case is like 1, 2, or 3 wins, but this football team has not looked very good. There's been a couple games there I think you could have argued that they could have had a chance to win, and that's just could have. And you look at the schedule, and yeah, some teams will be in different situations, but it's hard to point that win out. JC and I talked about it on the podcast last week. Like, where are you looking if the Redblacks are going to get a win or 2 or 3 like you're thinking?
Well, I think one thing, and to be very clear, I don't think the Redblacks are going to make the playoffs. I want to make that clear. I don't think they are.
I wasn't saying that either.
But no, I understand the question, and I'm getting to it. One silver lining here is you look at the schedule this team has had. This team is obviously 0-8, which is terrible. But they've lost to the Alouettes twice, they've lost to the Riders twice, and they've lost to the Elks twice. This team has had the hardest schedule to date of any club in the league. Now, the downside of that is the other 2 games were both losses. One was a 20-point loss to the Toronto Argonauts. The other was a 2-point loss to overtime to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which to me is the game that this team should have won. The Redblacks were by far and away the better team on that day, and they just choked that one away. But when you look at the rest of the schedule, it's a lot less daunting when you're not seeing Saskatchewan and Edmonton at all. They do play one more game against the Alouettes in week 12. So unfortunately, that's right around the corner.
Coming off a bye week, Montreal.
Yeah, coming off the bye week, Montreal Alouettes. Oh, geez. Maybe that'll be, who knows? It's hard to sweep a team. Maybe that'll be the Redblacks game. We'll see, but it is in Montreal.
Is it hard to sweep the Redblacks, though?
Well, I guess maybe not. We'll see. But this team does have Hamilton twice down the stretch. They've got Toronto twice down the stretch. They've got BC twice down the stretch. They've got Calgary twice down the stretch. Like, I do see this team getting to at least 2, if not 3 wins. But yeah, I think the long story short is this season is over. And I do kind of see this as a tacit omission that the season is over. The club signed Siona Tehema on Tuesday. He's presumably going to fill in for Bryce Carter. And on the one hand, it's like, okay, great. You're bringing in this 5-year CFL vet, 30 years old. On the other hand, it's like, well, listening to Ryan Dinwiddie's comments from practice on Monday, he talked about wanting to go younger. And obviously bringing in a guy like Tehema is not getting younger. Now, maybe it's too early in the season to say, you know what, we're just going to play the practice squad guys for the rest of this year and build for 2027. Even if that's what you really want to do. You're probably not saying that publicly because you want to sell some tickets in the meantime. But yeah, long story short, this team is in a whole world of trouble. I like that you mentioned Bryson Barnes, Justin, because frankly, I want to see Bryson Barnes, maybe not like for the entire rest of the season, but I do want him to get a shot. He is a young quarterback. He looked good in preseason. And if you are the Ottawa Redblacks, I mean, Jake Maier has not been awful this year. I don't want to paint that picture. Jake Maier has been with limited options around him. Fine. But if you are going to get back to the playoffs in 2027, the fastest route to doing that, if you are the Ottawa Redblacks, is getting better under center. He has the worst quarterback efficiency rating of any quarterback in the league to date this season, who has started multiple games. The only exception, if you want to kind of count it, is Trey Ford's worst, though Ford was only credited with, I think it was one. No, he has 3 starts in Hamilton. Okay, so he's the second worst quarterback efficiency rating of any quarterback with multiple starts. He just hasn't been sharp enough, right? And I don't think that's unfair to say. And if you look at, and this is maybe getting the weeds a little bit, but I'll say it. If you look at our 3DownNation reporting about quarterback contracts, there's only one starting quarterback really who I think is a legitimate option for the Redblacks in 2027 who is set to hit free agency, and that is Chad Kelly. Every other starting quarterback, with the exception of Zach Collaros, is under contract for next year. I guess you could throw Drew Brown into that mix as a guy who's potentially available, but like I don't see Zach Collaros going to Ottawa at this point of his career. I don't see Bo Levi Mitchell going to Ottawa at this point of his career. Like Chad Kelly is the only guy who's available. Otherwise, you're trying to pull off a trade. So if Bryson Barnes can be the guy and you can get him 4, 5, 6 starts this season, I think you do it, because then at least you learn what you have. You already know what you have in Jake Maier, and I guess again they're not giving up yet, but I don't know. When you've cut a third of your starting defense over the past few weeks, it also does kind of feel like you're giving up on 2026.
But is it dangerous though if you start Bryson Barnes, considering the lost season this has become, without proven people around him? I think there's a lot to be said for that. Perhaps you just keep him in the background learning, and he doesn't have to go through any of this. And as you alluded to, Hodge, if you don't get Chad Kelly or, Trevor Harris isn't under contract for 2027
That's
either,
true.
but I doubt he's not going back to Ottawa. And that was a mistake that has been absolutely magnified and can't be talked about enough. That we had an article on it, Hodge, but coming off a 5,000 yard season in 2018 and leading the Redblacks to the Grey Cup, Trevor Harris essentially wasn't re-signed over a signing bonus. Your starting quarterback is going to be your guy for the season, and it actually benefits the player and the team to give him a bigger signing bonus. It's unbelievable, and the numbers are out there. I broke it down in that article that I wrote about in terms of the Redblacks leading the CFL in starting quarterbacks over that span. Their record's been absolutely atrocious, by far the worst in the Canadian Football League. Harris had actually left his belongings in the locker room in Ottawa. That's how confident he was in coming back. Now, things could be vastly different in many ways if Ottawa had kept Trevor Harris. There's no telling if he would have played into his 40s there. It seems like this pairing with Mark Mueller has been great for both parties and obviously the Saskatchewan Roughriders. But to your point, if you're looking at 2027, I do honestly wonder if it's better just to keep Barnes behind the scenes off the field and not shatter his confidence. And if you don't get a proven starter in free agency or via trade, do you let Barnes head that runway of the offseason, a full training camp, before you put him out there? You look at quarterback development in the league, Hodge, you can give a guy a couple starts, or a guy gets even one start, and quickly, not just media and fans, but people in the building can sour on him. So I think that's a valid question that could be talked about in the nation's capital. Are you putting Bryson Barnes in the best spot to succeed for the long term of his career if you start him at all in 2026?
I think it's a great question. It's a legitimate concern. I do also think, though, you can maybe have your cake and eat it too a little bit here, right? There's no reason you can't, at the very least, install a package for Bryson Barnes and say, okay, we're going to take advantage of your athleticism. We're going to use you as a change-up to Jake Maier, who obviously doesn't offer much in the way of the run game. Not dissimilar to how for years we would bark about how the Edmonton Elks were wasting Trey Ford just sitting on the sideline going, you don't have to start him. You don't have to play him 50 plays a game. But like, why are you not giving him a series if your starter isn't necessarily lighting it up? Which, granted, Cody Fajardo played well in 25, but Trey Ford spent time behind some other quarterbacks previous to that who were struggling as starters, so they still wouldn't get Trey in the game. So I would like to see the Redblacks get Bryson Barnes in there to some extent, but we might be putting the cart before the horse here a little bit. It is still only week 11. But
They're
that said,
0-8,
again,
Hodge. I don't think we're putting it before the horse.
The Redblacks have, with these releases. And by the way, just so our listeners understand, there is a mechanism in the CBA where if you are a vested veteran player, by the halfway point of the season, your salary becomes guaranteed. So what that means essentially is if you are cut as a veteran, let's say after game 10, in other words, more than 9, even though you're not going to play the rest of the season, you are still entitled to what you would have earned on a per game basis for the rest of the season. So I think that explains some of the timing for the Redblacks, right? They're not on the hook for the rest of Eugene Lewis's contract. They're not on the hook for the rest of Amari Henderson's contract, Demerio Houston's contract. But yeah, the timing also does make you think they know deep down, they know they're not going to the playoffs. And by the way, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, but it's not just an East Division playoff race. The West Division, I think, with the likelihood of a crossover, comes into it too. And right now, the Redblacks are 6 points behind everybody. I don't really see a path for them to leapfrog 3 teams to get into the playoffs.
If it was 2027 under this ridiculous setup that we, I suppose, are going to enter into, where 8 of 9 teams make the playoffs.
Insane.
Would you think that the Redblacks, under the current standings, could have a shot to get in?
I mean, they're 6 points behind everybody. Like to me, the death knell for the Redblacks might be the BC Lions having a remarkable turnaround on defense. Like, this Lions defense was an absolute atrocity through the first 3 games of the season. They've been anywhere from solid to exceptionally good over the last month and a half. And if let's say the 2027 playoff rules were in effect, well, you just got to beat one, right? It's like when you're in the woods with your friends and the bear rounds the corner. You don't have to be the fastest friend. You just can't be the slowest friend, right? And I think maybe that was the team you'd point to, like, okay, Nathan Rourke is hurt. The defense is atrocious. We might be able to make it out of the woods here and have the bear gobble up the BC Lions. That's no longer the case. The Lions have won 2 games in a row. Nathan Rourke didn't play great against Hamilton, but I think will find his footing as he knocks the rust off. So I still think the Redblacks would be out of it if it was the new playoff rules. But I will say the conversation, like the narrative around the playoff changes, is going to be insane. Like, imagine this time next year and we're sitting on the pod and it's like, man, if the Redblacks don't win a game by September, they might not make the playoffs. Like, that's going to be ridiculous. I don't even begin to understand the playoff changes, but they didn't ask me for my opinion.
It's all about that postseason television money. And I get it to a degree, but the fact that 8 of 9 are going to make the playoffs, just ridiculous. So the league better hurry up and get those expansion teams coming. And yes, I said teams, not just one, because if you're going to have 8 teams make the playoffs, we need 12 teams in the Canadian Football League. Hodge, though, if you were in the woods and you were the slowest guy, would you trip one of your friends so the bear ate that guy instead of you?
I'll put it this way. If it was you, JC, and I in the woods, I'm pretty sure JC and I would both be trying to trip somebody because neither of us are built for speed. You
guys would be struggling to breathe from the dust left from my tracks. And then it's the 2 of you fighting for yourselves.
I do not want to give anybody the idea of JC and I having a foot race at Grey Cup. That's not going to work. No.
Might need to do it.
No, not happening. I ran
Especially
the 40.
If there's a 3DownNation event, Hodge.
I ran the 40 at the 2018, I think it was, CFL Combine, and I'm sticking with my time, whatever it was.
Get you guys ripping down the Red Mile there in Calgary.
What's the Red? I've never been to Calgary. I'm excited for Calgary Grey Cup and Combine. It's the only
you've never
CFL
been to Calgary?
City. I've driven through it. Like, it's not like I've never been there, but it's not like every other CFL city I've spent like considerable time, and I feel like I know the vibe of the city. I've seen the sites and those types of things. So I'm excited because between Grey Cup and Combine, I feel like I'll get the full Calgary experience. So I am excited for that. But to date, no, I don't know Calgary. It's the only CFL city I don't feel like I know.
The Red Mile became a thing when the Flames made a run to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2004.
Okay. I've heard the name before, and that's where like the fans would hang out and watch the outdoor game. That's correct.
It's a cool street, yeah.
They would stand
Avenue,
outside
Southwest.
and watch the. Makes sense. Well, hey, I'll check it out, but I'm not running down it.
We'll see. Through 10 weeks, the Saskatchewan Roughriders and Edmonton Elks are the top 2 teams in the West Division. If that holds and those franchises earn the top 2 spots, How could the other three teams finish in the rough and tumble West Division?
So I was really disappointed with the Calgary Stampeders this past week. I don't know how you pick off Chad Kelly 4 times and don't win the game. Vernon Adams Jr., who had been so sensational through the first 9 weeks of the season, had his first bad game of the year, which is unfortunate. But I still think I'm going to pick the Calgary Stampeders to finish third. I do really like their defensive front four, even their front six. I think Markel Lee has really emerged this season as a top middle linebacker in this league. And offensively, I'm going to say that it was a fluke in Toronto. I still think this passing attack can be great. Dedrick Mills, I still think is great. The offensive line, I still think is very good. I'll call it a write-off for now, but obviously the Stampeders will have to prove that. The fourth spot is interesting because a few weeks ago, I would have said that is the floor for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are not going to finish lower than fourth. And I am now questioning that because this team was, I wasn't around to talk about it last week, but they were so pathetic against Caden Salter and the BC Lions in week number 9. And now that Nathan Rourke is back, and he didn't look like the Nathan Rourke of old, but again, it was his first game back in a month. He's still, I'm sure, not 100% healthy, though he is apparently well enough to play. I think he's going to get things figured out. So if push came to shove, my West Division standing prediction right now would be for the end of the year, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary, BC, Winnipeg. And that would mean the Bombers missing the playoffs for the first time since 2015 and the first time, since kind of this, I don't want to say regime because, Kyle Walters, Mike O'Shea, and there have been many players with the club since their last playoff miss. But it'd be the first time in the Zach Collaros era, if you want to call it that, and the Brady Oliveira era or the Nick Dembski era for them to miss. So that's my order right now. But I'm curious, Justin, what's yours?
It's difficult to pick, man, but that's why we ask the hard questions at 3DownNation.com. I think Saskatchewan and Edmonton are ultra tight, and the West Division could come down to that final regular season game. Hodge, can you double check? I believe it's actually legitimately not just the final week of the regular season, but the last regular season game in week 21 is Saskatchewan Edmonton. So I think we can all agree that it looks like they'll finish 1-2 in some order. Then I look at, as you laid out, Winnipeg, Calgary, BC as they currently are in the standings, 3, 4, and 5. And I think Winnipeg just does not look like a good football team. And I think Brady Oliveira said it best that the Bombers in 2026 lack an identity. And I think it's easy to find with this team, Hodge, in my opinion, and I want your take on this, the Bombers have looked at their best when Brady Oliveira is getting consistent touches and they at least try to play bully ball. But when I look at the West Division, I think, okay, to your point about the BC Lions defense and Nathan Rourke, yeah, he might not be 100%, but, look pretty good coming back. BC is going to make the playoffs. I believe that. Comes down to Winnipeg or Calgary. And I got questions about both teams. For as great and as much as we praised Vernon Adams Jr. and his interceptionless streak and the fact that he started the season with over 20 passing touchdowns and no interceptions, he led the league in turnover-worthy plays. And I feel like that was not talked enough about during that stretch. You look at that stat, let's call it TWP for short. Vernon Adams Jr. compared to Davis Alexander, who's leading the league in passing yards. Davis Alexander is well down that list in terms of turnover-worthy plays. And for me, the majority of those turnover plays that I'm looking at are the interceptions that perhaps could have been caught. So I wonder, was that a little bit of a mirage from Vernon Adams Jr. to start the season? For as good as it looked like on the main stats that a lot of us like to look at, which I do understand. And I start to wonder about the Stamps, and they've been kind of up and down. The defense at times has looked good, but at other times, the defense has gotten absolutely carved up by other teams. So I would take the Bombers at the moment to miss the playoffs, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Stamps did, and they were the team that misses in the West Division. I guess we're assuming a crossover at this point because I think they have been too inconsistent.
You are correct. Week 21, the Edmonton Elks visit the Saskatchewan Roughriders on Saturday, October 24th, though that game will happen at the exact same time as the Ottawa Redblacks visit the Hamilton Tiger Cats, a game I'm not sure anybody's going to watch, depending on whether or not the Hamilton Tiger Cats are still in playoff position at that point. They are not right now. They are, I guess, no, they technically are right now. They have a game in hand. Or they've played one more game than some others. I guess if the season ended today, they would miss. Okay, I'm looking at the standings. Calgary would be the crossover team, and Hamilton would be out. I don't think the Hamilton Tiger Cats are totally sunk. We'll talk about that in a couple segments from now. But yeah, that Saskatchewan Edmonton game will be the one everybody is watching on Saturday, October 24th, and that could very well decide the West Division standings, first place versus second place. These two teams have been super evenly matched. They've played twice this year. The first game was a 2-point victory for Edmonton. The second game was a 2-point victory for Saskatchewan. Two must-watch football games. I can't wait to watch that game in week 21, and I think there's a good chance we'll see them play again in the playoffs. So to your point about Brady Oliveira, what I find interesting is his yards per carry are 5.9 right now. That's as good as he's ever been in his career, including his 2023 season when he should have been the MOP and in 2024 when he was the MOP. The thing that's lacking, though, is Brady has been a super effective receiver out of the backfield the last couple of years. He had almost 500 yards receiving in 2024. He had over 500 yards receiving in 2025. This year, he is on pace for fewer than 300. That part of the offense has basically gone away under Tommy Condell, and I think that is a mistake. I think when you look at the level of quarterback play, Zach Collaros had a couple really sharp games to start the year, cooled off a bit. Drew Brown looked really good in his first game as a starter against the Toronto Argonauts, and then cooled off a lot. You've got a great outlet there in Brady Oliveira to take some heat off of your quarterbacks. And when they're struggling with interceptions, as certainly Drew Brown has in recent weeks, there's no better way to help prevent those types of plays than saying, you know what? You've got an MOP leaking out of the backfield into the flat. Hit him, convert on 2nd and 5, and live to fight another first down. Like, you don't have to push the ball in harm's way all the time. And that part of the offense has disappeared. And then, I mean, defensively, they've given up just an outrageous number of explosion plays relative to past years. So it's not just the offense. The defense has struggled as well. They're also taking more penalties than they have in recent years. So there's lots to fix in Bomberland. And I think that's why, Justin, you and I both have them currently to finish 5th in the West Division standings. Chad Kelly threw 4 interceptions in Toronto's win over the Calgary Stampeders in Week 10. He said post-game he's going to stay aggressive for fear of being called check down Charlie, though he acknowledged that he has to, quote, calm it down a little bit, close quote, based on what the defense gives him. Did Kelly's performance in Week 10 concern you?
It does overall, but somehow Chad Kelly in 2026 is 2-0 when he throws 4 or more interceptions, which is ridiculous. And credit to the CFL stats people for putting out the numbers. The last player to win 2 games with 4 or more picks in the same season, Danny McManus in the year 2000. There have been 403 times that 4 or more picks thrown by a quarterback has happened in league history. Those quarterbacks are 62 and 341 in terms of wins and losses, a .154 winning percentage, and Chad Kelly is somehow 2-0 this year when throwing 4 or more interceptions. The picks are concerning, Hodge, because if the Argonauts can make the playoffs, and it looks like Toronto should be the second team in the East Division to make it in 2026, turnovers are killer. We've seen it time and time again, and it seems like Chad Kelly has this penchant for putting the ball into harm's way, and not only into harm's way, but at least a few times, if not more this season, throwing it straight to the other team or throwing it into double and triple coverage for really no good reason from what we can see on all the great replays that TSN shows on their broadcast. So it definitely is concerning. And Mike Miller has talked about it over and over and over and given the same answer, essentially saying that he talks about it with Chad Kelly all the time. Well, I don't think you're talking about it enough. If I was Mike Miller, I would be cutting up every single interception and sticking them in a video reel in front of Chad Kelly's face and saying, these cannot happen. Because if there weren't this many interceptions, I think the Toronto Argonauts could be right there battling, at least in some sort of contention, with Montreal for first place in the East Division. So yes, these interceptions are absolutely concerning. We know about Chad Kelly's arm strength. It is certainly elite. But when you continue to put the football in harm's way, that, as the CFL stat showed, is ultimately going to lead to your team losing more football games, way more football games than not.
Yeah, the fact that when Chad Kelly throws the football, it's intercepted 4.8% of the time this season is not a sustainable number. League-wide, the percentage is about 1.8, which is significantly lower than last season. Last season, it was 3.2%. But when you are almost triple the league average in terms of percentage of interceptions, that's not sustainable. And the Argonauts are lucky that they got away with that a couple of times, as you astutely laid out. That said, I do love a lot of what else Chad is doing. He's pushing the ball deep down the field. His average yards per attempt are 9.8. That is fourth best in the CFL behind Davis Alexander, Bo Levi Mitchell, and only 1/10 of a yard behind Trevor Harris. And he has thrown 18 touchdowns, and he's third in yardage. Like, he's on pace for well over 5,000 yards. So I like a lot of what Chad is doing. And I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy to say, well, it's either playing like this or playing like Check Down Charlie. Or I don't know why we said Check Down and Charlie and we wouldn't say Check Down Chad. But I think there's a lot of space on we'll call it the grayscale between those two opposites. I don't think you have to rein Chad in completely. And Mike Miller's been asked about this a bunch of times, right? And he doesn't want to put blinders on Chad or put too many constraints on Chad, because you want the upside. And frankly, it's a ton of fun, right? When you get to see quarterbacks slinging it. I would much rather sit down and watch a game where two talented quarterbacks, and Chad Kelly's a very talented quarterback, push the ball deep and test tight windows. And I think you live and die by a few of those interceptions, but I do agree with you, Justin. There have been a few interceptions this year where he has literally hit defensive backs in the chest. I can think of at least one earlier this season where he just was running to his right, threw it across his body, which you're coached from a very young age you're never supposed to do, and threw a pick. He also had a couple of those in this Calgary game where he just clearly misfired. So if you can find a happy medium, I think that's the best way to go for the Toronto Argonauts. Fortunately, defensively, they've really started to figure some things out in Toronto. Janarian Grant obviously had the return touchdown, which was sensational. And as a total aside, I think it's time to start thinking of Janarian Grant as a Hall of Famer. It's not easy to make the Hall of Fame as a return specialist, but he's still doing it now into his 30s. He's one of the best ever to do it. So I'm still bullish on what the Argonauts can do, partly just because of how I am not bullish. I'm bearish on the Redblacks and Tiger Cats in that East Division playoff race. But yeah, you got to get some of this cleaned up. You can't be throwing 4 picks a game and expect to make any noise come playoff time.
Chuck and Chad Kelly does have 18 touchdown passes, but the 13 interceptions in 8 games is just flat out not good. And Hodge, there's so much talk in the modern age of football about quarterbacks and their statistics. And I think one of the ones that a lot of us look at is the touchdown to interception ratio. And the way that football is being played now, I think at minimum, to be considered a really good quarterback, you have to be 2 to 1, if not 2.5, 3 to 1. And Chad Kelly, over the course of his CFL career, 53 touchdowns, 36 interceptions. That is less, and again, you're the mathematician or the better one on the podcast, than 2 to 1. He has to protect the football more to become that real elite quarterback in the Canadian Football League. And I'll reference Davis Alexander yet again, who is near the bottom of the league in turnover worthy plays and leading the league in passing yards. And he's right up there among the quarterbacks in terms of touchdown passes in 2026. He has 18, actually, tied with Chad Kelly for the third most in the league, but only 2 interceptions. His interception percentage, and I think that's a great stat to reference, Hodge, is 0.7%. His efficiency rating leads the Canadian Football League among starters who haven't gotten a gruesome injury and are out for the season. I'm referencing Bo Levi Mitchell. He was 132.1 prior to what's likely a season-ending injury. Davis Alexander, 122.5 in terms of efficiency. You got to go way down to find Chad Kelly at 103.6, and that's really his efficiency number because he has the 18 touchdowns. So it has certainly been entertaining. There's no doubt that Chad Kelly is a uniquely talented quarterback and can throw the football down the field. But you need to be making some better decisions and some better reads. And if he does that, to your point, the defense has gotten better, and I think actually relatively quickly, because they were pretty bad to start the year, Hodge. You had that yards per play number that Greg Quick's unit was giving up early in the season. I think that has changed. If Chad Kelly protects the football, Toronto could, and I stress could, possibly ascend into that tier that you talked about earlier, Hodge, of the legitimate Grey Cup contenders in 2026. But it will not happen if Chad Kelly stays chucking Chad Kelly and is just throwing it up without going through the reads and finding, at least those one-on-one matchups and not putting the football in harm's way.
Yeah, he's already set a season high for interceptions. He's thrown 13. His previous season high was 12. So that speaks volumes.
Harrison Frost made his first start for the Hamilton Tiger Cats in Week 10, completing 20 of 33 pass attempts for 239 yards, 1 touchdown, and Scott Milanovic won't like it, 1 interception and a 27-24 loss to the BC Lions. Hodge, what do you take away from Frost's performance?
I thought there were a lot of positives. I don't think, this was the type of blow the doors off game, like, holy smokes, where did this kid come from type of performance. I don't want to overstate it. But I thought he looked, for lack of a better term, highly functional. He looked like he was going through his reads. He looked like he was making quick decisions with the football. He needed to deliver the ball on time. I thought he struggled with that out of the gate. The first couple possessions here were ugly, and then he settled in. And Jake Dolagala was, in his lone start, not nearly accurate enough, really struggled in that particular loss. The team then turned to Trey Ford, and I think they were lucky to come away with the win in that Argonauts game. That was the one where Liam Hairelahu missed, I think it was a 31-yard field goal on the final play of the game to lose. And then after that, just not consistent enough. Like Trey Ford not delivering the ball on time, did not look comfortable. Yes, he was very productive at times with his legs. We know that that's part of Trey Ford's game. Now, that is not part necessarily of Harrison Frost's game. But I thought this was the best overall, at least just in my opinion. I thought this was the best quarterbacked game the Tiger Cats have had since Bo Levi Mitchell went down, with what I think very likely, though not officially, is going to be a season-ending ankle injury. And for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, you look at what the Montreal Alouettes are doing right now. I think fans in Steeltown have come to accept this is probably not going to be the year to end the Grey Cup drought, right? That is no longer the goal. I think the goal is let's play really solid, respectable football in the second half of the season and maybe make some noise in the playoffs. And I think that for the first time since Bo Levi Mitchell went down, I now see a pathway to that. This defense has played really well at times over the past month under Brent Monson. And the BC Lions, yeah, it's easy to look at their record and say, but look, going from Hamilton to play out Vancouver, not an easy thing to do. That defense is night and day compared to where it was at the start of this season. And so there was a pick, but also throw a nice touchdown. And he did push the ball down the field at times. He took advantage of a bust in coverage, hitting Myron Mitchell for 46 yards. He had a 34-yarder to Kenny Lawler. Like, there's a lot of weapons here, right? This offense was cooking at an unbelievable rate with Levi Mitchell under center. I don't think anyone's expecting Harrison Frost to do that. But can you at least turn up the temperature from where it's been, right? Can you start taking advantage of some of the weapons you have around you? Well, I thought for a small sample size, just one game, Harrison Frost did a solid, respectable job. Not spectacular, but solid and respectable. And I'm frankly encouraged and very intrigued to see what he could grow into and become over the next weeks and months, because I don't think at age 27, as someone who's just started a handful of professional games, one CFL game, I think he started 3 in the UFL earlier this year. I don't think that Harrison Frost is a finished product. I think there's a lot of development room left there in his game.
If you try to get into the mindset of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, you're thinking, if we get some decent quarterback play and our defense continues to play at a high level, perhaps we can catch Toronto for that second spot in the East Division in a possible home playoff game. It seems far-fetched, but that's how the team has to think. None of these professional athletes and anybody that even gets close to that level are going into games thinking that they're going to lose. Now, there might be some reality outside the building in terms of what the Tiger Cats might be able to do, but that's why ultimately they play the game. And Hodge, I think I would agree with you that that was the best quarterbacked game by a guy not named Bo Levi Mitchell in 2026 for Hamilton, and might give at least them some hope to possibly make the playoffs. Now, being second in the East isn't the only way. Perhaps they could beat out the Winnipeg Blue Bombers or Calgary Stampeders for that crossover spot, if indeed that actually comes to fruition or is a battle down the stretch. But I think you have to look at that performance on the road and think it was decent. You're going all the way out to BC, you're changing time zones. You know, you're in this new offense where you got to play a little bit the week before after Trey Ford was benched. And all in all, it wasn't terrible. We have seen way worse performances in a first CFL start for quarterbacks in the past. So that's why I thought it was okay and perhaps something to build on. And you alluded to it, Hodge. There are some absolute weapons on that Ticats offense to utilize. I think Larry Roundtree, the third, has proven that he's a solid back with some upside. And the receiving core has a bunch of great names. Everybody knows them by now, but Kenny Lawler tops the list. So, perhaps it's possible that Hamilton could actually be in the playoff mix.
Well, and they have Toronto twice over the next 4 weeks, right? So on a head-to-head basis, they've already got one win over the Argonauts. If you can even just split this upcoming head-to-head, that means you have the season series. And if you can sweep it, all of a sudden, I think Hamilton finishing second is absolutely in the realm of possibility. I think it feels a little far-fetched right now, but this is the Canadian Football League after all. We've seen crazier things.
The Tiger Cats too, Hodge, do have the Redblacks twice left on their schedule, so that might make it a little bit intriguing.
Well, they play Ottawa in week 18 and week 21. Who's to say who's going to be starting for the Ottawa Redblacks come week 18, week 21? We might all need depth charts at that point going, who the heck are these guys? I digress. It's now time for Hodge's Heritage Moment. On this day in 2018, the Saskatchewan Roughriders released Deron Carter. The native of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, joined the team as a free agent in 2017 and was named All-CFL after making 73 receptions for 1,043 yards and 8 touchdowns. He also played some defense that season under head coach and defensive coordinator Chris Jones, recording a memorable pick 6 off Bo Levi Mitchell. Carter played almost exclusively on defense in 2018, though things didn't go nearly as well. He subsequently joined the Toronto Argonauts, BC Lions, and Edmonton Elks after his tenure in Saskatchewan, though he never necessarily played back at that star level he achieved to start his career in Montreal and found again in Saskatchewan. Dunk, what do you remember of Duron Carter's tenure in Rider?
I remember him giving a touchdown ball to a fan who I believe had a health issue. It was like outside the game. That was a memorable moment. But honestly, Duron Carter was a receiver. Like if he would have just stayed playing receiver, and I know really not much of that is his fault, I think he could have had at least a couple, if not a few more productive years in the Canadian Football League. But honestly, looking back on it now, Hodge, it seems like his time in the CFL was a flash in the pan, as big as that flash was.
Yeah, only one all CFL selection, which is wild. But hey, when you've got the personality the size of a boat and you've got a famous name on the back of your jersey, you're always going to be well remembered. So yeah, I think it's cool to talk about. And I mean, look, the pick six to Bo Levi Mitchell, shoving Rick Campbell, the one-handed catch, like one of the greatest in CFL history. Like he gave us some super memorable moments, but yeah, they came over a fairly short period of time. So I think it is fair to call him a bit of a flash in the pan.
Let's go to the 3-minute drill. The BC Lions have selected Travis Lulay and Ryan Phillips for induction into the team's Wall of Fame. Are those worthy?
Absolutely. Ryan Phillips is one of the best defensive players in franchise history, and Travis Lulay, he's an MOP and Grey Cup winning quarterback. So these are no-brainers in my view. The Saskatchewan Roughriders signed University of Guelph drink product Vishon Genesis. What could he bring to Riderville?
I was told when he was at
that school.
Try not to say the city. That school. Yes, good one. That the way you say his last name is Genesis. Now, sometimes these things evolve over time, but I'm pretty sure it's Vishon Genesis. What could he bring? He's a rare receiver, Canadian, American, global, or otherwise, who is a legit core special teamer. And I think he has some upside as a receiver, really just a numbers game, I think, in Calgary. That's the reason why he got released. Fortunately for Saskatchewan, who have some Canadian receivers, like Samuel Emilus and Kane Schaefer-Baker on the 6-game injured list, that Genesis was available to bring in, and he can absolutely help on teams. Jarrell Broxton, the offensive tackle, has returned to practice with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. After missing the team's loss to BC, could he be back for Week 11?
I think he will be. I think, however, he's still going to be at right tackle, where the spot they probably need him is left tackle.
The Canadian men's team has already won a game at the IFAF Flag Football World Championships, despite the tournament not starting until Thursday. And no, you can't say kicking off because there's no kickoffs in flag football. How the heck is that possible?
So the men have 3 group games scheduled, or had 3. The third one against Nigeria has been canceled because Nigeria withdrew from competition due to what they termed a travel visa issue in a joint statement with IFAF. So that means with no replacement team available, Canada is 1-0 by default. And they don't ask how, they ask how many. And right now it's 1 victory for the Canadian men. And please check out 3DownNation.com. We've got the full schedule for the Canadian men's and women's for group play Thursday and Friday available. And then there will be on Saturday and Sunday some knockout, potentially even medal games for those 2 teams. Canadian receiver Malik Mega was waived by the Carolina Panthers with an injury designation. Do you think we'll see him with the Hamilton Tiger Cats anytime soon?
It's always a possibility, but if you're a guy like Mega, I think you probably see if any training camp injuries happen or rosters potentially shake out with other NFL teams leading into the regular season prior to making that decision. But on the flip side, Hodge, we have seen some players in recent history, like really recent past, make that decision quickly to come to the Canadian Football League. So certainly a name to keep an eye on. He is an absolute burner and field stretcher. Man, can you imagine what he could do in that Tiger Cats offense, especially obviously if Bo Levi Mitchell was healthy, but just with the way Scott Milanovic can scheme up throwing the deep ball, that would be highly entertaining. The Tiger Cats started first round CFL draft pick Jonathan Dennis for the first time last week. What did you make of his performance?
Thought he looked rock solid. Like I thought Nathaniel Desmoulins-Duguay looked good at right guard in previous starts, but the team decided to go with the rookie over Desmoulins-Duguay against the BC Lions. And yeah, I thought the offensive line looked rock solid. Dennis is bull strong. He's overcome 2 torn ACLs, so a really good story. Really nice to see him get the opportunity to start. Corey Mace didn't let Trevor Harris brush off reaching 40,000 career passing yards. How impressive is that to hit that?
Very impressive. Just the 12th player in CFL history to do so. And I think if there was any doubt out there that Trevor Harris was a Hall of Famer post playing career, that this just adds to an even more decorated resume. And again, to think, Hodge, the Ottawa Redblacks could have just paid this guy a signing bonus and brought him back in 2018. And perhaps they're the team that is having Harris play great football into his 40s. But not to be the case. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers have brought back defensive lineman Matt Jaworski from the retired list. What went on there?
So Matt Jaworski got into a car accident back in March. He was in hospital for multiple weeks and then stayed with his parents for a couple months as he rehabbed. So he didn't go into any other details about the collision, but evidently this was a very serious car accident. Fortunately for him, he has now made a full recovery. He's ready to get back on the field. And I thought he looked really good in limited action in 2025. So as soon as he gets the opportunity to play, he might be a nice upgrade on that Winnipeg Blue Bombers defensive line. For Justin Dunk, I'm John Hodge. We thank you as always for listening to the 3DownNation podcast. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletters at 3downnation.com. They are free to sign up for, both our news and our betting insight newsletters, and you can cancel at any time. So there's really no reason not to sign up. Get all the latest news, insight, and analysis into your inbox each and every day, like we know you love. We'll see you later this week for picks with JC and myself.